This is Secrets to Win Big, your roadmap to sustained growth. Brought to you by Arjun Sen, founder and CEO of Zen Mango, top brand growth driver, and a former Fortune 500 executive who has been called one of the most marketing intelligent minds in the business. Find him at zenmango.com. And now, here's your host, Arjun Sen.
Welcome to Secrets to Win Big with Arjun Sen. The smirk or the smile on my face will tell you all that this podcast will be a little different and very special. Today, I have this opportunity to have a conversation with Oni Sen. Oni is my baby brother, and I'm one of the luckiest person on the planet to see this cool person blossom and evolve in life. Oni is a storyteller who has directed some of the most watched and most acclaimed miniseries in India. Oni graduated from National Institute of Design, which again, I think is one of the toughest institutes in the whole planet to get in. Since then, he has directed numerous ad films and miniseries. Oni is known for his ability to understand human emotions and for his amazing understanding and details of the narratives. He's also a photographer and an illustrator. What wows me is every time he tells a story, the uniqueness of his storytelling. But most importantly, he always stands out naturally, not artificially, to be only Oni, unique Oni, and has no pressure ever to conform and be one of the pack. Oni, it took a while, but glad you're here, and welcome to Secrets to Win Big.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
So first and foremost, Oni, today I want to understand a little bit more about your storytelling, okay? And I really want to share my admiration. I don't do that all the time, is really admire your work. And being in Houston, look forward to any time any of your ads or miniseries are releasing. The first question, why do you tell stories, Oni?
Well, the simplest answer would be, I don't know how to do anything else. But that's actually not the right answer. I'm sure I could do something else. Because, you see, from my childhood, our childhood, stories have been a very important part of our lives. Everything, if you remember, because we grew up at a very unique point when there was of course, there was nothing called internet. We didn't know what internet was. Everything we learned, whether it's history, geography, whatever else, was stories, right? If you remember the things that we used to wait for, like every morning, the newspaper used to be flung into the house from this guy who would go on a cycle, right? He'll fling it into our veranda. And I think both of us knew the days the newspaper will be a little heavier because that's the day there will be a comic book inside, right? And then we will wait for the afternoon because that's when we were allowed to read that. Now, what were we waiting for? We were waiting for stories, right? Starting and then moving on to one of the persons who sort of influenced me, both of us, Maiji, our grandmother. From everything I remember was all a story, right? And at that moment, it was almost as if it was natural. It's only much later in life I realized how important it was to explain simple things where I remember once I had lied about something, right? Which I did often. But there was, instead of being reprimanded for my lying, I mean, of course, I got reprimanded as well. But I remember Maiji told me the story of lying from Mahabharata about Ashwatthama and the elephant, right? Now, the point is that, and thereafter, she actually spoke to me about different kind of lies. Now, we all lie in life, right? About, hide the facts about various things at various points. But I think that moment through a simple story, as a bunch of stories, she communicated something very, very deep, um, which has stayed with me forever. Now, coming back to why do I tell stories? I believe that if I need to communicate something, there is no better way than through a story, right? And the stories are all around us. Sometimes you don't need to invent stories. It's around us at every moment. And I guess that's one of the reasons why I like telling stories.
I'm stuck at one thing you said. We both grew up with the same grandma Maiji. Why the heck did you get the special royal treatment? For me, if I lied, it was the snacks. I can still feel it here. I never got stories, anything like that. Maybe you were born with extra gold card, special kid, but another day, another discussion to go through. But I think, that was very powerful because, for us, everything was, even TV was just coming. Everything was writing. Like we used to read the history book of Kundra and the stories we created in our mind. Or when there would be a load shedding and we would sit in the balcony and Maiji would tell a story. Or I still right now remember when Maiji would take the sari and become a Roman emperor and talk to me friends, Romans, countrymen. I'm like, wow, it was all about stories and imagination and how we created because we did not have a visual impact.
There is one small thing, if I may add to that. It was also about us creating our own stories. So, going by the television thing, if you remember, Saturday and Sunday during the movies, so there used to be movies on our television programs. A lot of times we were not allowed to watch because it was not age appropriate or we had to study. So I remember in our next door neighbor, whose windows I could see, there was a big photograph of one of their ancestors, which had glass, which was at an angle like this. Out there, their television used to get reflected. So I used to sit there, see bits of that reflection through over that photograph of this old gentleman, and there was no sound to that. Through that, I used to concoct my story of what could have been happening in that, and that was so thrilling, man. Anyway, so yeah, stories.
That was simple. So now that what we got there, I want to also understand a little bit unique because that's the part I want to go a little deeper into you is you were born different, but more important, you had confidence to be different from an early age. These are things I didn't like about you is I used to work extra hard to get permission from our dad, Bauji, to go to a movie. You 4 years younger walked in and told Bauji, I'm going to the movie. And before he reacted, he said, Bauji, I'm just informing you. I wanted to be you. You were different. So I want to go into the difference and build on that. And in the storytelling world, you have continued that. You have continued that which was in your DNA. How did that unique difference of Oni storytelling blossoms in the stories Oni tells?
Well, honestly, I don't know how unique my storytelling is, but I guess, but I try to read into stories in my own way, based on my own understanding. Now, before I get into that, there is one thing which I very strongly believe in, is that, which is what I was mentioning just before this, that there are stories all around us. We just need to pick. There are two things: stories and emotions. Those are things you can't really invent a new story. It's there. You can mix and match and tell a story and make it as believable as you can. And now, like I said, there is, what I try to find, there are two things which I find, I won't call it unique, but there are two things which I really excites me, and I try to follow that. One is that how to find a story in the mundane. By mundane, I don't mean mundane. By mundane, I don't mean boring. By mundane, I mean that something that we find and feel in our everyday life. And there's one very important thing about storytelling is the person you're telling the story to, you have to make it as relatable as possible. After you make it relatable, then comes your engagement, right? And then comes excitement, then comes everything else thereafter, right? Because if you haven't gotten that person, to relate to your story or your character or empathize, then you lost that person, right? So now the most amazing thing is how, because a lot of times I remember when I was growing up, even thereafter, and that's also one of the roots, I think one of the reasons why storytelling excites me is that at every moment, I used to find, which I do even now, I try to pull myself and see, if whatever moment I'm going through and I'm seeing around me, I try to pull myself and see where is the story. If I had to narrate the story or stage that, how would I stage it? It is a bit of an out of body experience, but I really enjoy doing it. And what happens thereafter because of that is whether it's a son, a boy showing his school report card to his father, where out of 10 subjects he has failed in 8. There is a story there, right? There is a beautiful story there. Painful, yes, because he might get whacked once or get reprimanded, but there is such a beautiful story of the boy and the father, and how the boy would try to maneuver the discussion towards something else to get out of that moment. Now, that is a story which all of us can relate to, right? And so coming back to the kind of when I make films or when I tell stories, I try to make my moments and events as real as possible, which we can relate to. The other thing which I find very interesting and which I try to follow in most of the work that I do is the stories of silence. It's a bit like how when we were in design school, and in a design school when we were doing, say, typography or composition, there is something which we were taught that a negative space sometimes tells a story which is deeper than the positive space, right? So it's almost like there are two alphabets. The negative space between the two alphabets actually define the two alphabets, because if it's not correct, it will not look correct. So the same way, in a scene or in a story or between two characters, the silence sometimes tells more than the words. And that I have tried consciously very hard to work on over the years, and I really enjoy it. I mean, I can give you examples of stuff, but I really enjoy. A lot of times I go through a scene and I cut down all the dialogues, and I said, okay, let's just do it in silence. How do you feel this? So I think those are the two things which I personally love sort of exploring, and I guess that's unique.
Love that. Love that. And as you were talking about silence, recently I was talking to one of the top, late night show stand-up comedians. What he told me was the difference between an okay comedian and an amazing comedian or a stand-up is the urge to pause. And he explained to me that initially, if he would put 20 one-liners or whatever it was in a 15-minute session, Now he does put 5. And when I asked him why, he said there are 2 reasons. One, he explained to me like streaming. He said, even though I am familiar with it, it takes people time to process and to come back, process, and smile. But the bigger answer he gave me was priceless. He said, Arjun, it gives me time to look around and savor the smiles on people's face. I'm not here for money. I can make money in 50 different ways. I'm here to pick every smile from every person and put it in a little bag. And I just love that little childlike feeling that was there. So I want to take the storytelling to a next level, because if you go back to all your work, you constantly evolve. Okay. I want to understand, where does that drive come from? Where does that inspiration come from? Because it's very easy for you to find a formula and keep doing the same thing, same way, over and over again. Okay. In Hollywood, Bollywood, everywhere, we see people who make obscene amount of money doing the same thing, but you're different. Like, how do you reinvent? What's the inspiration? What's the drive to always get to the next level?
See, it is to do with, so if I need to define, or rather answer what drives me, right? Or what makes, why do I look?
Try to get better.
What drives me to get better? Okay, what drives me to get better? Is there how, if I can make people feel, right? This is, that I feel is the most important part of me making films or telling stories. It actually sounds very simple, but I mean, you know as well as I do, it is not. It is probably the toughest thing to do. It's like when you've written your books, or when you do your talks and otherwise, or it is about how do we make people feel, and I find, and it's a struggle. Sometimes I can, after I'm done with it, and I watch it myself, or I see people watching it, I know that I missed it by a bit, right? Or people felt something which is totally wrong. I mean, not by wrong means not what I meant. So it's a learning. Of course, it's a learning for me how to make it better. Now that I feel that what is most fulfilling is when people feel something that I had intended, and what is even more fulfilling for me is when people feel something which I had not thought of or intended to, but in the same grain, right? So I'll give you an example of what I mean by that is many years back, I had done this project, a docu feature called The Saints of Sin, and it was about the 7 sins and stories of 8 women, Indian women, and they were real stories, and they were talking about their lives. And so I remember when I was I had done this with a friend, and produced it myself, shot it myself, directed it myself. So there was no I didn't know what I wanted to do with this film. And later, when I started showing it, there was one in a design festival in Pune, in a design festival, they were screening this film. And I walked into the room, and there were about 30, 40 people there. And they were all youngsters. They were all design students. And I was wondering that it's a wrong forum, right? It's a wrong forum. It's a wrong place to tell the stories because it's eventually talking heads, women who are talking. There is a whole bunch of folk songs, very static film. And so I gave them a little talk, and then I went out. I was having some coffee where the film was happening. It was 80 minutes long. And I came back when it was done for a Q&A session. It was amazing what I saw inside. There were about Nobody had left. They were all sitting there. There were 6, 7 of them were in tears. And the moment I saw those faces, I knew that they have felt it, right? They have felt the stories. They have felt everything that I had put into those 80 minutes. And there are 2 of them who came up to me later, who had no questions, came up to me and shook my hands and said, thank you for making this. I see my mother in this. And which I felt was so beautiful. And that film didn't get me any money. That film didn't get me amazing amount of acclaim or anything else. But I thought I made people feel. And that is what keeps me going and pushes me to get better at making people feel. And I think that's something if I can keep doing always in different ways, I'm happy.
I think there's no bigger reward than at the end, people connect. And as you talked about, relate and connect is very important. As we were talking about feeling and evolution, after I wrote the book Customer Karma, the book did okay. A few years later, it hit me and I started doing a search and replace in the book. In the whole book, after 20 years of so-called cool corporate experience, I missed the most important concept. It's about feelings. The word feeling is not there even once. And to me, again, I wrote a book that was good enough, but what I learned was that whole journey of blind sight, blind spots, what you do not know, what you do not see, it only comes to you when the time is right. I think maybe I was not ready to own feelings before. It took me a while to be feeling sensitive. But I think that is very important, is at the end of the day, the worst conversation is at the end of a conversation, the other person looking at you and saying, are you done? Thank you. No, that even the handshake that you're talking about, you can feel that it's a different handshake. So I want to evolve from here. So this part is little like a quiz. Okay. I want you to talk about 3 words or phrases that describe you or your work. And I want to put you on the spot by saying, imagine I am introducing you to a group of movie makers in New York. What would be 3 words or phrases I will use to describe you? But here's the catch. After you do, I will read to you from 5 different individuals what their one-liner about you is. And I really think it would be fun to see how you see yourself and how others see yourself. And it is very flattering. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. It's very flattering what others think.
Can we do it the other way around?
I'm sorry, it's not an open book test. Good try.
Okay, this is really tough because I'm terrible at describing myself. I can talk at length about what I do, but so if I had to describe myself,
or phrases, please.
3 words
or phrases.
Okay.
Anything that comes to the top of your mind, because
honest,
yeah.
Passionate storyteller.
Right. So these are, again, don't try to figure out who said what. Okay? This is not the exercise.
Sure.
The first one is truly understands human stories. Okay? The second is the details with which he builds characters. That is what makes it relatable. The third person, I think, was struggling to separate you, the person, from your work, talked about calm and cool. The next one was, which I really felt was the most unique of this, because I really started thinking about it and it was very powerful. If he chooses to ignore something, it is his tactical tool. And this right away, Oni, I started relating, because if I take the work away from you, when I talk to super CEOs, most super CEOs know what they do not want to do, what is out of scope. And this really hit home, and I want to repeat again, is if he chooses to ignore something, it is his tactical tool. Next one is, he does not rest until he delivers his creative best. And the last, a tremendous creative artist of the highest order, hiding under a totally unassuming persona. His hair may be the only giveaway. I really think you struggling to answer this question really validates this particular individual's thoughts and reflections. So as you listen to all this, what went through your mind? What are you thinking?
I think people are kind. But I think, just not going back, just to reiterating this thing of feeling. There's one more thing which I want to add to that feeling part of it. It's not just the people who I am telling the stories to, right, or the viewers of the film or the whatever I'm making. I feel people who are part of my journey, say the actors or my team members, my cinematographer, musicians, whoever, I make sure they feel what I feel or what I want them to feel at that moment. Because you see, I'll tell you. So, very simple. You see, we are all a resonance of our actions, right? At every point. So, for instance, none of us very, very rarely we act, we always react, right? We react to a moment, we react to ourselves, we react to our surroundings, whatever happens to us, we react. So, in a scene which is being played out, I very rarely, when we are shooting, I very rarely tell an actor what to do. Because I don't know, I'm not an actor. I think if I tell an actor what to do, I'll probably limit that person. I tell the actor what to feel when he or she walks into the scene, what to feel during the scene, and what will be the residual feeling when he or she walks out of the scene, right? And that is something which has helped me immensely, because you can see some serious magic happening. And that's something because most of the actors I work with, they know that's how I work. And because you see, events don't make narrative. It's the feelings that make narrative, right? So the same way, my cinematographer and my operative cameraman, who I work very closely with, I always explain to them, of course, that the feeling of, the movement of the scene and everything else is fine, but what is the most important feeling I need to get out of the scene? So they are focused with me to capture those bits. They are not capturing a scene of event. They are capturing a set of feelings. The same way when a musician scores, before I get into anything of we should have this kind of instruments, this kind of thing, is when I go through that scene, this is what I need to feel. You need to make me feel that, right? So, and this entire thing of making somebody feel is something which I try very hard to follow in every little step that I follow, that I take. So, yeah.
What I like about what you just explained to me, little tiny world, because don't know much about this industry, is feelings have to be authentic. They cannot be faked. If you don't feel it, you cannot transfer. And as I was listening to you, I also realized as the director, you are getting this common thread of feeling through the cinematographer to the musician, everybody. So till they all feel, it's like you're an orchestra conductor. You're getting everybody to feel. When they feel, then the magic happens. And I'm getting dangerous listening to you. So I'm learning more about feelings. So with all these, where is Oni heading to next? And I'm not talking about projects. I'm just talking about bigger picture, vision, because projects is too tactical. I can talk to you about that any day, but I want to use today to know what's in your mind. Like, where are you thinking of going long term?
So, see, firstly, our industry is right now going through a huge sort of turnaround, turnaround with technology, AI. A lot of things will not be the same anymore. But there is one thing I feel will not change for a while, at least, is feeling and storytelling, right? I want to continue doing that, but I want to get smaller. What I mean by that is that, you see, we all have this thing of getting bigger. By bigger means go bigger projects and bigger things and bigger stories. It's exciting. It's definitely exciting. It gives you a high. And I'm not going to shy away from that. And whatever I'm planning to do in the near future, some of them are, big in terms of scale and storytelling and everything else. But I want to get smaller and I want to get simpler, because I feel that the it's like they say that a simple story simply told is the toughest story to tell. And I want to keep at it so that I can get so simple that you don't even realize that I told you a story, but you felt it and you walked away with a smile or with tears. And that's where I want to get to. Get smaller stories, smaller projects, eventually.
And again, I think this takes me back to where I started this conversation, that you always follow the path less traversed. Anybody else at your position, I would have heard that, hey, I want to make this bigger project, even bigger, Hollywood, Bollywood, intergalactic, will play in Mars. But I really love the way you think and taking it back. Now, Oni, as I was researching, it came to me that you recently were recognized with an award about IMDb. I want to congratulate you, but I really want to ask, why the heck does Oni not put those things on social media or anywhere else? Like, how do you process these? And what makes you being authentic? I'm not critiquing you. I just want to understand why the urge to keep everything to yourself and not share these.
There are things that I'm not good at. I mean, there are many things I'm not good at. Some of those things which I'm not good at is to talk about myself in public or to somebody else. I'm not good at that. And also, I feel uncomfortable talking about, okay, I got this award or this recognition. It's I'm not very proud of it. Let me state it very clearly. I'm not very proud of it, but it's who I am. So, and even
you're proud
without
of the award, but you're not proud of the fact that I'm just want to separate that.
I'm proud of the award. Yeah. I'm grateful for the award and the recognition. Absolutely, because you see, ours is not internal storytelling where we tell a story to ourselves and sit in a room. It is for public consumption. And going back to my sort of last web series, which I did, season 1 and season 2, was one of the most popular ones. So it really amazes me. And I really love the fact that, people reach out and congratulate me and tell me that, I've seen it, I've loved it. Not some people say I didn't like it, but the fact that they've seen it. So I'm really grateful for that. But it's just that I have an issue. I don't know how to. I will learn. That's one of the things which I will learn, hopefully at some point, how to talk about myself in social media and
Got it? So
Getting there.
for the next podcast, we'll have that. So this one is a very simple question. One thing.
Okay.
You have to go back and change one thing professionally. Redo. Do it differently. Is there anything? It could be nothing, but is there anything that if you had to go back, a little different?
Lots of things. I can write a book on that. There's this thing
Is there a pattern in that? One thing.
No, so there are a couple of things to that. One is that there are projects that I do, and after I finish doing it, I look at it, and the first thing that I keep praying when I watch it, that I hope everybody don't catch on to all the mistakes that I've made in this, right? They really glare and they really bother me. And there is very rarely, I think there are probably maybe two pieces of work that I've done where I feel that, there's no, at least to me, I haven't found any mistakes in that. But the rest of it is full of mistakes. So to answer your question, if I could go back and change a bunch of things, I would definitely change a whole bunch of things in a lot of projects, a lot of films that I've made, and maybe a couple of choices, maybe some things that I said no to, even though I've always tried to pick up projects which have talk to me kind of thing, not just about money. And but I would have probably said yes to some of the projects and not said yes to some projects. So yeah.
I want to reflect on this and be just for a second an older brother to you. I really feel mistakes are very strong, judgmental words. Mistakes are like an X, red, wrong. None of us make these mistakes intentionally. Okay? At any point of time when you made those choices, at that point, it was the right choice based on resources you had and the best you could do. None of us at a point in a decision-making have the amount of time you have later on to sit and look at things in hindsight. Okay? And it took me a while to get there. But now I have a very, very simple rule. Rule one, Arjun makes no mistakes. Others can think, but I feel I make no mistakes because I intentionally give my best, and that's all I can do. Which means when I go back into past, I only go back to the past for two things. One, to get a highlight reel and celebrate. That's it. And second, learning. Learning is very different from mistakes, but I really want to just bring that because as you talked about, I think, we both grew up in a world where conforming was important. I used to conform. You were the cool kid that was there, and I'm so glad somebody even mentioned that. But from here, I just want to take the conversation totally to a different area. Right now, at the end of this podcast, you open your email and you get an invite. The invite is for an event for 18-year-old Oni today, and 100-year-old Oni. Three of these Onis will meet. So question one, where will they meet? One place. Question two, what would the aura of the event be that day? And finally, what would one thing each one of them will say? Place, aura, and one thing 18-year-old Oni today and 100-year-old Oni will say.
Think of tough questions, man.
Hey, I came ready.
So, first question, where will they meet? I think they will meet at a place which has been one of the most formative places in my life, which is my NID loans. Because that place has really changed my life. And then what will what is the next question?
What will the environment be? And then what one thing every one of them will say?
I think they will not probably be very kind to each other. I'll tell you why. When I was 18, I'm positive in my head. I wouldn't have settled for whatever I'm doing now, right? I guess you know me and a lot of things which I won't talk about, but I was a different kid, right? So I wouldn't be very kind towards this man who talks about storytelling and whatever else. So I'll think that, dude, get a life, man. That's one thing. And the 100-year-old, again, won't be very kind towards the 18 and the 100-year-old probably won't even look at the 18. They're not worth my while kind of thing, right? And looking at the current one will probably, say, dude, what were you doing? So you're wasting so much time. Look at me now. I could have been so much better, done so many things if you had just worked a little harder and done things differently that time. You really messed my life up, man. So I have a feeling that it won't be a very pleasant conversation between the three.
Got it. I've asked this question nearly 200 times.
Okay.
And this is the most unique answer I've ever got. Okay. Every time, the common theme for the last 199 times maybe I've asked is about holding hands, dancing together, like you complete me, you set me up. But this was the first time you showed me it's okay to have regrets, conflicts, and coexist. All three of them are you. And I
18, you knew me. I think you were out of home when I was 18, but you got a drift of it. I was not a very nice human being.
I'm not going there. And I also feel the word no has a lot of connotations. I'm not going inside that. But I really feel that it's very important to look at there's a pattern, there's a trend. And I really think that Oni standing for unique, being who you are and comfortable, I think is very powerful. Oni, this was a great conversation. Okay, I really appreciate you opening and sharing. And I'm also appreciative that it takes a podcast to get to know this other side of your brother, and I'm really grateful. So finally, because you were so kind to answer every question, if you have any question, not too difficult, for me, it's only fair.
I have a question which I was meaning to ask for a while, but then I was looking for the right forum. And why do you do these podcast Secrets to Win Big? Because it's not about your getting more recognition, getting more. It's not that at all. It's something slightly different. So what is it? Why do you keep doing it? And what do you get out of it?
So my life initially was too planned. Then I learned this whole concept of unintended learning. Many a time, we search for what we think we need to know that really gets us in a very tunnel vision. Like if you take me to a different country and I do not know what food to want, being in America, from here, I want to go and ask for a place by saying, get me salad with grilled chicken. Okay. I do not know. They have 500 different things that I would like better. And I found the only way to go into the world of unintended learning are these podcasts. A 16-year-old young entrepreneur, she had just sold her second startup. And she was taking an extra year before she took her admission acceptance to Yale. I had to ask her, are you never afraid? And she looked at me and said, Arjun, I look at fear to be a wall. Every time I see fear, I get excited because all I know is once I see the wall, I throw myself, and every time I get on the other side. Oni, where the heck will I get this kind of unfiltered, pure wisdom? Okay. And that's, I think, is this podcast is every time I get excited because some are goofy. Like sometimes people get too tactical. They try to sell, and you and I both know is the world is too small to sell. And that's one of the reasons, because I also listened to a decent amount of podcasts before I started. I realized that podcast hosts over time have a tendency to become experts. They will take every answer and spin it into their answer. And after some time, I've also been on a podcast where I don't have to say anything. The person keeps answering all the questions himself. And I would, after a few times, just say a word and pause, and the person answers. It's beautiful. So the smartest thing I did accidentally, or because of Clint McCaskill in my team, was the design of the podcast logo is half my face. So every conversation I today start by getting excited by who will complete the other half. Because the other half is the unintended learning that will enrich my life. What will I do with it? Who cares? Because in life, I feel too many times we get too excited about connecting dots. Today, I feel no, I want to collect as many dots. If I have only 2 dots, only thing I can draw may be a straight line or a curve. If I have 1 million dots on a page, think the art that we can create, like it's mind-boggling. It's an amazing challenge. And that's a long answer to your simple question. And truly appreciate you asking.
No. I mean, the reason I asked this was I was envious. Because, yeah, it's amazing what you do.
Thank you. You can have your own podcast, Secrets to Win Bigger. You can do that, and you can. I'll give that to you. Oni, thank you again. Truly appreciate. This was amazing. Was looking forward to it, and I'm glad I did that. Thank you.
Was lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You've been listening to Secrets to Win Big with Arjun Sen, founder and CEO of Zen Mango, top brand growth driver, and a former Fortune 500 executive who has been called one of the most marketing intelligent minds in the business. To learn more, visit www.zenmango.com. Share this podcast with your friends and subscribe wherever you like to listen to podcasts.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.